Every morning starts exactly the same. Your alarm goes off at 6:30. You drag yourself out of bed, throw on the same cheap work clothes, grab whatever you can find for breakfast, and leave your tiny apartment before the sun is fully up. By 7:55, you're standing behind the counter at the same place you've worked for the last 3 years, earning exactly $15 an hour. Your manager is already complaining that you're 5 minutes behind schedule, even though your shift hasn't technically started yet. Customers barely look at you when they order. Your coworkers spend the morning talking about overdue rent, credit card bills, and what they would do if they ever became rich. You usually just listen. As far as everyone here knows, you're exactly like them. Your car is 12 years old, your apartment is small. You bring lunch from home because buying food every day seems too expensive. When someone suggests going somewhere expensive after work, you usually say you're trying to save money. And technically, that isn't a lie. 3 years ago, you had $3,247 to your name. You started putting a few $100s aside every month, then taught yourself how businesses and investments actually worked. At first, nothing happened. Your account moved from $3,247 to $4,100, then $6,800, then $11,000. Nobody noticed. You kept showing up for every shift. Then one small investment worked. You reinvested everything. Another worked. You started buying tiny pieces of businesses, selling some positions, moving the profits into better opportunities, and refusing to upgrade your lifestyle. $25,000 became $47,000. $47,000 became $83,000. Then one morning, before putting on your work uniform, you checked your phone and saw $102,418. For the first time in your life, you had 6 figures. You stared at the number for almost a minute, locked your phone, and went to work. Nothing changed. Your manager still told you to clean the counter. A customer still complained about waiting too long. At lunch, one of your coworkers joked that if any of you ever made $100,000, you'd probably quit immediately. You laughed with everyone else and said nothing. Months passed. Your money kept growing faster than your paycheck. $140,000, $210,000, $380,000, $560,000. Your $15 an hour job was becoming almost irrelevant financially, but strangely, you kept coming back. Nobody asked questions because there was nothing to question. You still drove the same car, still wore cheap clothes, still checked the schedule every Sunday. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, you wake up, reach for your phone, and open the account you never show anyone. The number loads. $1,003,782. You refresh it. Same number. You are officially a millionaire. For a few seconds, you just sit there on the edge of your bed staring at the screen. You could call your manager right now and quit. You could walk into a dealership this afternoon and replace your old car. You could move out of this apartment. You could tell your family. You could send a screenshot to your coworkers and watch their reactions. Instead, you lock the phone, put it in your pocket, grab your work clothes, and leave. At 7:55, you walk through the same door. Your manager looks at you and says, "You're on register today." You nod, tie your apron, and take your position behind the counter. 5 minutes later, your first customer walks up. Nobody in the building has any idea that the employee earning $15 an hour standing in front of them became a millionaire before breakfast. And for now, you want to keep it that way.
For the next few weeks, being a millionaire feels strangely disappointing. You expected something to change the moment your account crossed 7 figures, but Wednesday morning looks exactly like Tuesday. Same alarm, same old car, same $15 an hour shift. Same manager reminding you that employees aren't supposed to check their phones behind the counter. The only difference is what's on that phone. While your coworkers see you checking messages during lunch, you're actually watching an account worth more than $1 million move up and down by thousands in a single afternoon. One good day can now make you more money than an entire month of working here. But nobody knows. When your coworker asks if you can cover his Saturday shift because he needs the extra cash, you say yes. When everyone orders lunch and you pull out the sandwich you brought from home, someone laughs and tells you that you're the cheapest person they know. You laugh too.
After work, you drive back to your small apartment, open your laptop, and spend the evening managing the part of your life nobody sees. Your investments have grown beyond a few stocks. You now own pieces of several small businesses, have money spread across different accounts, and spend hours studying opportunities that most people around you have never heard of. $1,003,782 becomes $1.08 million, then $1.16 million, then $1.31 million. You could stop working tomorrow and your lifestyle wouldn't change for years, but quitting would immediately create questions you don't want to answer. Your family would ask where the money came from. Your friends would want to know how much you had. Your coworkers would start looking at you differently. So you make a decision. Nothing changes until you decide it should. You keep the old car. You keep the apartment. You keep the job. But hiding the money becomes harder than earning it. One afternoon, your manager calls everyone into the back room and announces that overtime is being cut. Your co-workers are frustrated. One says losing 5 hours a week means he might not make rent. Another starts calculating how much less she'll have for groceries. Your manager turns to you and says, "I know everybody needs the money, but there's nothing I can do." You nod seriously, even though your investments made almost $4,000 that morning. Later, one co-worker asks how you're going to manage with fewer hours. You shrug and say you have some savings. He pats you on the shoulder and tells you things will get better. That night, sitting in your 12-year-old car outside your apartment, you check your phone. $1,487,206. You almost laugh. The next morning, your manager asks you to stay late because someone called in sick. You agree. Another month passes. Your account reaches $1.9 million. Then, something happens that makes the secret much harder to maintain. One of the private companies you invested in gets acquired. Your original investment multiplies several times almost overnight. You wake up to emails from your accountant, open your account, and stare at the new total. $4,736,891, nearly $5 million. You're supposed to start work in 40 minutes. For the first time, you seriously consider not going. You sit in your apartment looking at your uniform hanging over the chair. $5 million means the job is no longer unnecessary. Financially, it's almost absurd. An entire 8-hour shift earns you $120 before taxes. Your investments can move by more than that while you're walking from your car to the entrance. But 40 minutes later, you're back behind the same counter. Your manager walks past and tells you to wipe down a table someone left dirty. You grab a cloth and start cleaning. During lunch, your co-workers begin talking about money again. One says he'd quit his job at $500,000. Another says he'd need at least $2 million. Then someone looks at you and asks, "What about you? How much money would it take for you to never come back here?" You glance down at the cheap lunch in front of you, then at the phone in your pocket containing access to almost $5 million. You smile and say, "Probably more than you think." Everyone laughs. Nobody realizes you're the only person at the table who already knows the answer. By now, your account is approaching $5 million, but at work, you're still just the guy making $15 an hour. Nobody treats you differently because nobody has a reason to. Your manager still gives you the worst shifts when someone calls in sick. Customers still complain to you about things you can't control. Your co-workers still invite you to cheap restaurants because they assume anything more expensive would be outside your budget. And the strange thing is, you start noticing how differently people behave when they think you have nothing. One morning, your old car refuses to start in the employee parking lot. You're standing beside it with the hood open when your manager walks past, looks at the engine, and jokes that maybe someday you'll finally be able to afford something made this decade. You smile and say, Maybe. What he doesn't know is that you could buy every car in the parking lot without touching even 1% of your net worth. Later that week, your co-workers start planning a weekend trip. When they discuss splitting the hotel, one of them quietly tells you not to worry if you can't afford it. They can cover your part and you can pay them back later. You thank them and decline. That evening, you go home and check your account. $5,214,880. The number is becoming harder to ignore. You decide to allow yourself one upgrade. Nothing ridiculous. Nothing that would immediately expose you. You visit a dealership across town where nobody from work is likely to see you and buy a new luxury car in cash. But instead of driving it to work, you rent a private parking space several blocks from your apartment and keep driving your old car every morning. Your new car becomes part of your second life. On your days off, you drive it. At work, nobody knows it exists. The same thing happens with your apartment. You find a modern condo with floor-to-ceiling windows, a rooftop pool, and enough space that your old apartment could almost fit inside the living room. You can easily afford it, so you buy it. But you tell almost nobody. As far as your co-workers know, you still live in the same tiny place. Your life begins splitting into two completely different versions. At 8 o'clock in the morning, you're cleaning counters and listening to your manager complain about labor costs. At 6 o'clock in the evening, you're sitting in a condo worth more than your manager will probably earn in decades, reviewing investments on a laptop. At work, you check the price before ordering lunch. At home, your portfolio can gain $20,000 while you're making dinner. At work, your manager reminds you that being 3 minutes late could affect your schedule. At home, you receive an email confirming another investment has increased your net worth to $6.8 million. And the richer you become, the more interesting the experiment feels. You begin wondering whether people would behave differently if they knew. Would your manager still speak to you the same way? Would co-workers who barely notice you suddenly want to become close friends? Would relatives start calling more often? You decide you don't want to find out yet. Then one afternoon, a co-worker notices something. You're reaching for a box on a shelf when your sleeve pulls back just enough to reveal the expensive watch you forgot to take off that morning. He stares at it for a second and asks, "Is that real?" You immediately pull your sleeve down and laugh. "Of course not. You think I'd be working here if it was?" He laughs too and walks away. Problem solved. At least, you think so. 2 days later, you're leaving work when the same co-worker sees you standing across the street beside your new luxury car. You weren't supposed to bring it anywhere near work, but your old car is being repaired and you thought nobody would notice. He stops walking. You stop too. For several seconds, neither of you says anything. Then he looks at the car, looks at you, and asks one simple question. "Whose car is that?" You look at the car, then back at your co-worker. For a second, you consider telling him the truth. Instead, you shrug and say, "A friend let me borrow it." He looks at you, then at the car again. You can tell he doesn't completely believe you, but eventually he nods and walks away. The next morning, you arrive at work in your old car like nothing happened. Your co-worker watches you pull into the parking lot, but doesn't say anything. The secret survives, but now you realize how easy it would be to lose control of it. Your net worth keeps climbing. $7.1 million. $7.8 million. $8.6 million. At work, nothing changes. You still wear the same uniform, still earn $15 an hour, still take orders from the same manager. Outside work, almost everything has changed. You move into the new condo, but keep your old apartment for a few more months so nobody questions the new address. You hire an accountant to manage your growing investments. You start meeting business owners, investors and lawyers after work, sometimes arriving at meetings still wearing the clothes from your shift. One evening, you leave work at 5 o'clock, change clothes in your car, drive across the city and spend the next 2 hours discussing a $700,000 investment in a small company. The next morning, you're back at work, cleaning a spilled drink off the floor. The contrast becomes almost ridiculous. Your manager once lectures you for 10 minutes because you forgot to clock back in after lunch, costing you less than $4 in wages. You stand there, apologizing, while your phone vibrates in your pocket with a notification that one of your investments has gained more than $30,000 that day. Another time, a customer gets angry and tells you that if you worked harder, maybe you could get a real job. You simply smile and finish the order. You've stopped feeling insulted by comments like that. In a strange way, they make keeping the secret more interesting. Then your net worth passes $10 million. You celebrate alone. No party, no social media post, no expensive dinner with friends. You sit in your new condo overlooking the city, open a bottle of something slightly nicer than usual, and watch the number on your laptop. $10,083,441. The next morning, you wake up at 6:30 and go back to work. But maintaining two lives is becoming exhausting. You have business calls during shifts that you can't answer. Your accountant wants meetings while you're scheduled behind the counter. Investment opportunities arrive while your manager is asking you to restock shelves. You start taking longer bathroom breaks just to answer emails involving hundreds of thousands of dollars. Your coworkers notice that you're constantly checking your phone. One jokes that you must have a secret girlfriend. Another says maybe you're gambling. You let them believe whatever they want. Then the mistakes begin. One morning, you accidentally arrive wearing a jacket that costs more than a month of your salary. You tell everyone you bought it second-hand. Another day, a coworker sees a notification flash across your phone containing a number with far too many zeros. You lock the screen before he can read it properly. Then your manager asks for your new address because the company needs updated employee records. You hesitate for just a second too long. The same coworker who saw your luxury car is standing nearby, listening. He looks at the expensive jacket, then at your phone, then at you. You can almost see him putting the pieces together. A few days later, you walk into the break room and the conversation suddenly stops. 3 coworkers are sitting around the table. One of them asks where you really live. Another asks whose luxury car you were driving. Then the coworker who first noticed everything puts his phone on the table. On the screen is a photo taken outside your new condo building. In the photo, you're getting out of your luxury car and walking toward the private entrance. Nobody is laughing anymore. He looks directly at you and says, "You're not broke, are you?" For a moment, you say nothing. 3 coworkers are staring at you, and the photo of you outside your luxury condo is still sitting on the table between them. You could invent another excuse, but there are too many pieces now. The car, the watch, the expensive clothes, the phone notifications, the condo. So you smile and say, "I never said I was broke." Nobody laughs. They immediately start asking questions. How much money do you have? Where did it come from? Did you win the lottery? Are your parents rich? Is the condo really yours? Is that actually your car? You refuse to give them a number, which only makes them more curious. By the end of the shift, almost everyone at work has heard some version of the story. One person says you secretly inherited millions. Another thinks you're a crypto millionaire. Someone else is convinced you're pretending to be poor for a social experiment. Your manager hears the rumors and calls you into his office. He closes the door and asks directly, "Is there something I should know?" You tell him your personal finances have nothing to do with your job. Technically, that answers nothing. For the first time since you started working there, his tone changes. He isn't ordering you around anymore. He's careful, almost polite. The next morning, co-workers who barely spoke to you before suddenly want to sit beside you during lunch. One asks for investment advice. Another starts telling you about a business idea he's had for years. Someone who once joked about your old car now wants to know whether you can help him choose stocks. You still haven't told anyone how much you're worth. But simply believing you might be rich is already changing how they treat you. Then things spread outside work. A co-worker tells a friend. The friend finds your social media. Someone discovers public records connecting your name to the condo.
Another person finds your involvement with one of the businesses you invested in.
Your family calls. Your mother asks why she's hearing from someone else that you own an expensive apartment. A cousin you haven't spoken to in 2 years suddenly sends you a friendly message. An old friend asks if you want to meet for dinner, and before you even respond, mentions an investment opportunity he thinks you'll love. Your phone begins filling with messages from people who suddenly seem very interested in your life. Meanwhile, your net worth keeps growing. $10.8 million, $11.4 million, $12.2 million. The number you worked so hard to hide is becoming more valuable at exactly the same time the secret protecting it is disappearing. Then your manager finally sees the car. Not a photo, not a rumor. The actual car. Your old vehicle breaks down again, and this time you don't have the patience to hide anymore. You drive the luxury car directly to work and park in your usual spot. When you step out, several co-workers are already watching through the window.
Your manager walks outside a few minutes later. He looks at the car, then at you, then back at the car. "That's yours?" he asks. You nod. He asks how much it cost. You tell him. His expression changes immediately. For the rest of the day, nobody treats you normally. Your manager offers you a better schedule without you asking. A co-worker who used to avoid covering your shifts suddenly offers to cover one for you. People laugh harder at your jokes. They ask more questions about your weekend. They listen differently when you speak. And that's when you finally understand why you enjoyed keeping the money secret. For years, you knew exactly how these people treated you when they believed you had nothing. Now you're watching in real time what happens when they begin to believe the opposite. But they still don't know the full truth. They think maybe you have a few $100,000, maybe 1 or 2 million. Then one afternoon, your manager walks into the break room holding his phone. His face looks completely different. Someone has found a public business filing connected to one of your largest investments, and an article estimates the value of your stake. He places the phone on the table in front of you. Your co-workers gather around. Nobody says anything for several seconds. Then your manager looks at you and asks, "Are you worth more than $10 million?" This time, you don't make up an excuse. You look around the room at everyone waiting for your answer and quietly say, "Yes." The room goes quiet after you say yes. For months, your co-workers have been trying to figure out whether you had a little extra money, maybe a lucky investment, maybe a wealthy relative. Nobody expected more than $10 million. Your manager looks at you like he's seeing a completely different person. Someone finally asks the obvious question. Then why are you still working here for $15 an hour? You could give them a complicated answer, but the truth is simple. At first, you stayed because you didn't feel rich. When you had $100,000, quitting seemed irresponsible. At $1 million, you wanted to know whether the money would last. At $5 million, the job had become part of your routine. And eventually, you kept coming because this was the only place where nobody cared about your net worth. Here, you knew exactly who liked you, who ignored you, who respected you, and who didn't. Nobody expected money from you because nobody thought you had any. Now that changes almost immediately. Your manager suddenly stops criticizing small mistakes. He asks whether you're happy with your schedule, and even mentions that a management position might become available. You almost laugh. Yesterday, he was reminding you that being late could cost you hours. Today, after discovering you're worth millions, he suddenly sees leadership potential. Some co-workers change too. One who rarely spoke to you starts texting you after work. Another asks whether you could lend him $20,000 for a business idea. Someone else wants you to introduce him to wealthy investors. A co-worker who once offered to cover your hotel because he thought you couldn't afford it, now refuses to let you pay for lunch because he doesn't want to look like he's using you. Not everyone becomes fake. A few people treat you exactly the same, and strangely, those are the people you begin trusting most. But the secret is gone. Your family knows, your friends know, your co-workers know. Even people you haven't spoken to in years begin appearing in your messages. And now every interaction comes with a question you never had before. Would this person be treating you this way if they still thought you earned $15 an hour?
Weeks pass, and your net worth crosses $13 million. But for the first time, the number feels less important than everything happening around it. Then one Friday afternoon, your manager asks you to stay late because another employee called in sick. You look at him, then at the clock, and suddenly realize how absurd the situation has become. Your investments made more than $40,000 this week. You own a multi-million-dollar condo. You have enough money invested that you could probably never work another hourly shift again. Yet you're standing here being asked to sacrifice your Friday night for another $45. You smile and say no.
Then you walk into the back room, take off the uniform you've worn for years, fold it carefully, and place it on the table. Your coworkers realize what's happening before your manager does. He asks whether you're quitting. You nod. There's no dramatic speech, no revenge, no stack of cash thrown onto the desk. You simply thank everyone, grab your old backpack, and walk toward the exit. Outside, your luxury car is waiting in the same parking lot where your broken old car used to sit. You get inside, but before starting the engine, you look back through the window. A few coworkers are watching you leave. 3 years ago, you walked into that building with $3,247 to your name. Now you're leaving with more than $13 million. But the strangest part isn't the money. It's knowing that for years, everyone around you showed you exactly who they were, because they had no idea you were becoming rich. And maybe that was worth more than the $15 an hour.